Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I'm going to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. We begin first by taking a look back over the last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation. And one of the things I want to point out is the trajectory of the most recent systems and where the next few are going. Because we overestimated total accumulated precipitation here in North Carolina last week. As you can see here, we saw generally precipitation amounts relatively light, with the exception of a few big thunderstorms that rolled through the midsection of the state, and also what happened back in the Appalachian Mountains. We were anticipating quite a bit more than this. And why I bring that up is because that might be instructive about what the pattern's going to do next, because just like we saw last week, another cutoff low has come down through California, and it will be emerging into the Central Plains. And if you just look across the whole of the United States, this weather pattern has been sending low pressure systems toward Maine very quickly. And the question is, this drier area, if you kind of look here, everywhere south of that line, is that something we continue to see as we progress forward? Now, before I get into some of the details about that, I want to show you what's been happening around the rest of the country, because this past weekend's system not only dumped enormous amounts of snow in parts of Sierra Nevada, some locations here picking up 4 feet of snow. By the way, that still leaves them about 10 foot in deficit, but still they're making progress. But look out across the central United States. We saw snow spreading in through this whole corridor. That filled in some regions right in through here that actually had all that snow melt away. Now, speaking of snow that melted away, all of this is currently gone, but we're going to be adding snow to this part of the United States. Now, why should we be talking about in the video for the Carolinas, okay? We should talk about it because of this. Over the next week, we see that not only is Sierra Nevada getting quite a bit of snow from the next cutoff low that sneaks down like this, but we're going to be adding quite a bit of snow to parts of the high plains. And adding snow into this section of the country this time of year increases our spring flooding threat. And with this cutoff low coming down, see it right in through here digging in, and the subtropical branch of the jet stream feeding into Texas and eventually flattening out as it goes here across the United States, this is going to be the setup over the next week that could be increasing the flooding threat in the midsection of the United States, but also be bringing in some wet weather to the Carolinas. In addition to that, can you see here coming through the Canadian prairies the push of colder air? That's what's going to get here by the end of this week, cooling the whole of the lower 48 down. But let's keep on that narrative of what's happening outside of the Carolinas. Take a look at this. The whole of the next 10 days features this omega pattern in the flow of the jet stream. You can see the Greek letter omega and what I just drew over there. Well, strong branch of the subtropical jet stream comes in, but look, right in through here. South of that, things are dry. Come to the north, it's dry. It's right where the flow comes right through the middle where things are wettest. And we keep this into the context of this map. So this is what I'm getting at here. Now, I'm sure you're going to be watching the video over on the left, so let's talk about that first. There's a guy in North Dakota running through trying to get the corn out that he wanted to get out last October, but due to extremely wet conditions and then a snap freeze and then snow, they've been unable to do this. But you can see the heaviness of the equipment as it runs through this field, just busting up all that saturated soil, and it's still got, several inches of snow in here between the corn rows. Well, what I want you to notice is the whole of the upper parts of the Mississippi and the Missouri River are currently showing up quite wet. The Ohio Valley is showing up wet. The Tennessee Valley, getting to the south of that, is wet. And all of this water has to drain out into the Mississippi here and eventually get through the Gulf of Mexico before we can ever get a lot of field work done. So I'm trying to put this in perspective of what spring field work is going to look like. The drought that's ongoing in California will have some correction to it this week. We're going to get some more precipitation in there, but nothing to make up for the deficit they've seen since the beginning of the year. So we just try to make sure we understand what's happening around the rest of the country before we dial it in and talk about North Carolina. But let's get there, okay? By the end of this week, we're going to be watching for our omega pattern to evolve such that a deep cutoff low that's over California today is finally going to be ejecting into the Central Plains. Ahead of that, big warmth. Now, we're not going to see it right at the beginning of the week, but it's going to be here toward the end of the week across the eastern half of this country. But as we know, every time we get a trough that comes out of the western United States pulling into the central U.S., this not only increases our severe weather threat in this area, but brings up the precipitation chances across the rest of the country. So this is what things look like by Thursday. Let's get to the end of the weekend. The most important things I want you to be watching, first of all, is where is this ridge going? you see that it's now backing up here over toward the Aleutian Islands as our third in a succession of 3 different cutoff lows finally comes into California. So the one we had was over the weekend. Round 2 is coming through this week, and this will be round 3 that'll show up by next weekend. Now, after that passes through, I'm going to be watching for a significant pattern change. So by day 10, I see that this ridge still hangs out over the Aleutian Islands. Deeper cold is anchored over the Arctic, but broader trough feature in this area. Now watch this. By the time we start the month of April, I don't see a strong model signal telling me that we're going to keep this, this highly amplified pattern that's going to do something like this. And instead, I think we're just going to have to watch to see where the ridge goes from Alaska, how deep this trough is across the western United States, because it's not looking deep right now, and do we maintain a broader ridge over the southeast? Those are the big questions to be answered as we move into the month of April, and we're going to try to answer them at the end of this video. Now, throughout this week, especially into the day on Tuesday and Wednesday, as the cutoff low finally comes out of California and emerges into the south central plains, we're going to increase severe weather threat over parts of Texas. And then as we press into Thursday, that severe weather threat moves out of Texas into the parts of the lower Mississippi River Valley here. And we're going to see if this gets all the way over to the Carolinas by Friday or into Saturday here in a few moments. To do that, let's look at our high resolution modeling first. So this takes us through Monday and Tuesday, and now into early Wednesday morning. So let's step this back and see what we're talking about here. First of all, early in the morning on Monday, the main show is going to be in this section of the country where we've seen the precipitation in the overnight hours. Now, the deep cutoff low that we're going to talk about midweek is still sitting off the coast of California, bringing in tons of snow here into the Sierra Nevada. What are we dealing with across North Carolina? Well, midday today could see some showers along the coast, could also see some showers here in the Appalachian Mountains. As we press out of the afternoon on Monday into the evening hours, we can then see the more widely scattered showers moving across the state. Now, what's going on here? Well, there's a deep cutoff flow here and then relatively flat flow across the rest of the United States. So watch what happens as we go from Monday night into Tuesday morning. We just continue to see those widely scattered showers sitting on that zonal flow right here in this section of the country. So this is 8 a.m. Tuesday morning, pressing throughout the day on Tuesday. It could be a soggier day for North Carolina, especially in the morning on Tuesday. Now, by the time we get into Wednesday, look, higher pressure builds into the Ohio Valley, and that pushes right here over parts of Pennsylvania. So we're going to get the benefits of that high pressure on Wednesday. But this is actually loading up the midsection of the country, and I want to show you where we go from there. So let's flip over to the European model, and let's pause this by the time we get out to Wednesday afternoon and evening. Now, at this particular point on Wednesday evening, the high pressure cell that was over Pennsylvania is now sitting off the coast. And what I want you to watch is the first push. This is the lead wave that came out of that cutoff low, is now going through the Ohio Valley. What does it do? Well, in the overnight hours on Wednesday into Thursday morning may increase our chances for seeing some precipitation in North Carolina, but not much. The big wave, the main one, is coming right out here in the central United States. And this may have strong to severe storms that stretch in through this section of the country all the way down here into Texas, with a blizzard on the back side of it here. Again, this is Thursday afternoon and evening. Well, as that low elongates and pushes to the north and east, it increases our rain chances on Friday. So, well, the question is, does it get there on Friday? Look at that. The latest model run keeps that frontal boundary stalled here. And while we get the warm-up toward the end of the week, when that front does push through, looks like maybe we're going to wait until Friday night into Saturday before we get the precipitation coming through North Carolina. But look at this powerhouse of a high-pressure cell moving in behind this for Saturday afternoon and evening. And that is going to give us the source of the cool-off for the weekend. All right, so that is what we're looking at this week. Now let's zoom in and take a look at some of these numbers. Here's the whole of the country through next Monday morning. Let's zoom in and take a look at what we're expecting in parts of North Carolina after I mention this. Remember, this section of the United States, as we talked about in last week's video, one of the wettest places in North America since the start of the new year. As we zoom in here, taking a look at our operational European model, light rain spreading through early this week and again later this week with the chance for more rain on Saturday. We may be adding up about a half an inch. I'm going to have to wait to see if we get more thunderstorm activity out of this to see if it maybe piles up a little deeper. But overall, this is what we're anticipating in terms of rainfall through next Monday morning. All right, so it seems to be that trajectory, taking the storms and the heavy precipitation to the north and western North Carolina, continues to be the mainstay. What about week 2? It's at this point where that third cutoff low comes into California, and as it ejects, it'll do the same thing once again. Take a storm system in the midsection of the country, race on off to the north and east, but with open Gulf of Mexico and Atlantic moisture transport, we see the models are keeping the whole of this region on the wetter side of things. Why I think that might be the case is because after this cutoff low emerges, the broader trough it's sitting in is just that, broader in through this area. Therefore, we could push that rainfall further to the coast. So maybe it's looking like a wetter week 2 as well. All right, what are our temperatures doing before we discuss the longer range? Well, today on Monday, generally across North and South Carolina, 5 to 10 degrees cooler than average. But watch the changeover through midweek. So here's Monday. Let's talk about Tuesday's departure, back toward normal. What about getting into Wednesday? Now remember, this is when the first big system comes out. We see generally about 5 degrees above average. Thursday, though, look at that. Much above average on Thursday. Into Friday, may see 15 to 20 degrees above average. But what did I tell you? That big high pressure cell moves in by the time we get into Saturday, which is when we increase our precipitation chances here across North Carolina. And for the weekend, here's Sunday. Getting into next week starts off very cool. In fact, we can see that if we look at day 5 through 10. So this gets us from the 20th to the 25th. That's when that colder air finally invades and sets up shop in the midsection of the United States, spreading to the East Coast, again, starting this weekend, and that's where we go into a cooler time period. But look at this. The models want to, for day 10 through 15, which is the end of March, reload that pattern. Broader trough in here, broader ridge off the East Coast, saying, hey, let's go back over to slight warm anomaly. But I'm telling you, with the trough here, this ejects systems across the United States, brings some colder air behind it. So while this is a 5-day average, remember, this could be a pattern that changes quite a bit. Now, overall, Alaska is what I want you to watch most carefully, because the changes in Alaska will ultimately determine if this pattern maintains itself through the month of April. Other thing I want you to watch is that the MJO is going to emerge out into phase 1, 2, and 3, which may mean as we get toward the end of this month, the chances of us maintaining a much above average temperature pattern back off a little bit. That's all I'm trying to say out of this. What the bigger picture is, well, take a look at this. Major differences between spring a year ago and spring now. On the bottom, I have mid-March 2019, and on the top, I have mid-March 2020. Now, what I specifically am addressing is a year ago, we had warm water stretching all through this area. We also had, because of this, what are called westerly wind bursts. Those mean that the trade winds were not nearly as strong coming out of the east. Now, what does all that mean? Well, this year, the warm water's tucked further to the west, and cool water has emerged here and here. We're getting at times these stronger trade wind values. So what this has got a lot of us thinking about is whether or not this upcoming spring and summer may develop a weak La Nina. That will be critical for ocean temperatures and wind shear across the Atlantic and possibly impact our hurricane season. I'm just putting a seed in your mind to be thinking about this right now. Here's another thing. A year ago right now, we were just seeing the buildup of the global winds, and they stayed strong all the way through April, May, and June, before collapsing here into September, sending much of the southeast over to very dry conditions. Our global winds since then have recovered, reaching a peak back in January, and a secondary peak now at the beginning of March. If these continue to drop off, that would mean that spring would arrive with a pattern that could have more blocking to it. And more blocking means more stagnant weather patterns, and we need to establish where that block is going to be. So with that, let's stretch this out and show you the latest long-range forecasts from the National Multi-Model Ensemble. So this is looking at April, May, and June precipitation anomalies. We see that this section is showing up dry with wetter conditions that stretch right in through here. This is more than likely fed on the strong subtropical jet stream coming in like this, but it looks as though spring may favor a wetter pattern early. Now remember, this model is not perfect, so we're just getting an idea here, and we're going to back this up with some other model forecasts. So April, May, and June from the European model doesn't quite favor the wetter conditions here, but certainly keeps the stronger subtropical jet stream, which is why we see near average to wetter than average conditions in this area. Because of that, near average temperatures in through here as well after a very warm start to spring for much of the southeast. Now, this does not mean it's going to be cold. It just means the chances of us staying much above average in temperature as we get into April, May, and June may back off a little bit. Now, going beyond there, I want to show you the latest forecast for June, July, and August. Now, this is where I don't have much confidence in the forecast models, okay? That's because with the development of the potential maybe of La Nina-like conditions, we may not get the wetter conditions in through here, which is what the models are currently calling for. But what'll be tricky is figuring out what our hurricane season is going to look like. So that's a wild card that's always in place. What I want to tell everybody to be watching out for, and I'm going to draw over here on the image on the right. Normally the Bermuda high sits here. If for any reason we see that Bermuda high shifting over toward Atlanta, that would push us over toward a very hot and dry summer. So you want something to watch all late spring and early summer, watch the position of that high pressure cell. It will be critical in telling us what our summer patterns are going to be. All right. To finish this up, I want to give you a quick international update. We did see over the last week precipitation return to parts of Argentina after being very hot and very dry for quite some time. You can see it right there over the weekend, heavy rainfall. Another thing, I want to turn your attention to the Middle East because a big low pressure system moved through parts of Israel, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan over here, Iran and Iraq. And that system that went through there actually hit the latest desert locust outbreak. And I'll show you that as we finish up this video. First, South America. Now, over the last month, look over here on the right here, February 14th through March 14th, southern Brazil and Argentina were quite dry. We've now started to see some of the estimates of the size of the first crop of soybeans and some full season corn. They've pulled back those estimates in terms of how big those crops are going to be. Now, Argentina did get rain over the weekend, but here in Paraná, that's Rio Grande do Sul, and in Paraná, we had some pretty bad drought and heat issues, and pest issues have been a major problem plaguing the crop in Paraná. Now, over the next 10 days, let's get those drawings off there. We see much of Brazil's main growing regions showing up with wetter than average conditions. Same thing for Argentina. So I don't think you're going to hear much of a weather story coming out of South America over the next 10 days. But take a look at this. That is the latest video that emerged this weekend from Saudi Arabia, where the desert locusts are swarming again. Now, from the FAO over here on the left, this is their latest spring outlook map. And what I want you to notice here is some of the numbers. They're anticipating March through June increases in the size of these locust swarms of 20 to 400%. See that? Those numbers are huge. And what I want everyone to be watching is two things. Food scarcity in this part of the world is going to be a problem with these locusts. And then we need to see if before the summer monsoon sets into India, if we're able to get these locusts to move through the Ganges River Valley over toward China eventually. And if that happens, that is something that needs to be discussed in great detail, as it could mean a major problem for India and China as we work our way into early summer. So I want to keep you aware of these global issues, keep you aware of the bigger picture of things happening around the United States, but focus in on North Carolina. And we'll leave it off there. I hope you have a great week, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Thank you.